everybody. Welcome back to the Get Wealth Podcast. I'm your host, Brennan Wiersma. Please be sure to like and subscribe if you haven't already. Today, I'm here with Dan, the real estate man, and I think it says enough just by the name. You've been doing some investing in the Philadelphia area, and you've been pretty successful from what I can see. So I appreciate you coming on the show today. I'm excited.
Well, thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Yeah. So how long have you been investing in real estate?
I've been investing in real estate. Wow. Probably about 18 years now.
Wow, that's quite a long time. How has that changed for you? Did you get into it at a good time, or what was that learning curve for you like?
Yeah, so I am an accidental real estate investor. So unlike a lot of other investors who always wanted to own real estate, I had zero interest. I was a union electrician for 18 years. I worked for the railroad here. And so that was my day job. And I went to a trade school. So it was my co-op job between junior and senior year. And after I graduated high school, I started working there full time. So I had that good job like early on. Around like 1920, me, my brother, and a buddy of mine, we started a promotional business. So started out doing little parties and worked that up to doing like 10,000 seater venues. So wow. we were bringing artists, and honestly, that's how I thought I was going to become wealthy. I thought I was going to be the next Alan Heyman, if you know what that is, big boxing guy, does a lot of, but he started doing concerts. And so I was fairly young. I was in my early 20s and I was making good money, both at my job and with my business. And my mom, who is a real estate agent, but she's a mom. So I was a young guy, I was making some money, and she didn't want to do what most young guys do, right, when they have some money, which is blow it on whatever young guy stuff. And so she was like, well, why don't you invest in real estate? And I had zero interest, but it's my mom. So I'm like, well, I'll make her feel good. I'll go out, I'll look at a couple of deals and I'll let her down, lightly later on. And what happened is through that process of me letting my mom down lightly, I looked at some things and I said, well, you know what? This wouldn't be a bad third income stream, right? So I had my job, I had my party business, and then I would have this rental property. And just to give you the idea of the strategy that I was using at the time, I had about, 23 grand or so saved up. I bought a bank-owned duplex, needed a full gut rehab, and it cost me $20,000. So I was like, well, that works, right? I could just buy it cash. I had no idea how to rehab. I had no idea about anything. I just happened to have the cash. And so that's how I got started.
Well, how did that deal end up going? Did you finish it and flip it?
Yeah, so that's a good question. So, again, I was working at the time, and at the job that I had, you could basically work as much overtime as you wanted. And I was what you call the overtime king. If the overtime got to me, it was not getting by me. That's just how I was back then. And so what I did was I went back to that. I worked a bunch of overtime. I was doing shows, and I financed it out of my pocket. And I did most of the work. And I hired bootleg. I hired jackleg contractors at the time because I didn't know what I was doing. And it took about a year and a half. I got it done. And I put some tenants in it, and I realized I hated being a landlord. And what I realize now that I didn't realize then is that being a landlord is a skill set. And it was a skill set I did not have. Because again, like I told you, I came into this with zero strategy. But I ended up getting the pain in the butt tenant out. And I remember I put the house on the market on a Monday, put it up for 87.5, and so that gives you an idea of how long ago this was. It was a fully rehab duplex, put up for 87.5, and by Friday I had 2 full price offers, and so I went to closing about a month or so later, and like I said, I did all this cash. I did it all out of my pocket. And when I went to closing, I got my closing check, and I'm like, damn, right? I got this check that was more than me working all year long. And so it definitely left a big kind of imprint on my brain of like, wow, this is something, right? I turned 20,000 into 87,000. Now, obviously, there's a rehab cost and all that, but still, I got more money out of it than I put into it. Mm-hmm. And it definitely opened me up to the idea of investing in real estate.
Yeah, for sure. So how has that transformed into now? Are you not doing buy and hold rentals anymore? Are you mostly fix and flips?
No, it's the other way around. So I've done fix and flips. I've done a little wholesaling. But right now I am buy and hold. And I use a niche that I call multifamily conversions, which is I convert properties that are not multifamily dwellings into multifamily dwellings by right. And what that means here is that I don't have to go through the zoning process or the variance process. It's what the Philadelphia zoning code allows you to do by right. And I do that because for quite a few reasons. Number one, it opens up a lot more opportunities than just finding existing multifamily properties. I'm able to buy properties that have a different use and therefore a lower cost. So somebody's selling me a property as a single family, but in my mind, I am going to be converting it into a 4-unit or 5-unit. They have no idea. So they're pricing it as a single family, and I'm buying it as a single family. But then I'm turning it into, 4 or 5, 6 units, whatever it is. And so that has been extremely advantageous. And then the other thing is not a lot of investors know how to do what I'm doing. You don't have all the pieces to the puzzle to actually execute on the conversion strategy.
Wow. I mean, I've never heard of that. How did you learn how to do that? Did you have someone show you?
No, it was sort of, it was a gradual evolution. So, as with the market cycles, strategies change, right? And so what you were able to do even 2 years ago, you're not able to do now. So when I started shortly before the crash, but as a very once in a while investor. And my job was my main income. So I just bought things as opportunities kind of came up. Then as I became more serious, so just as a backstory, when I was working at SEPTA, I decided when I was 30, I was going to quit SEPTA by the time I was 35. And so I quit SEPTA 3 days before my 35th birthday. And how I did that was that I became more serious about real estate investing after the collapse. So when I turned 30 was 2010. So it was after the collapse. I still had my W-2 income, which was, pretty good for like a job goes. I didn't have a lot of debt, and there were a ton of bank-owned properties. And at the time, there were bank-owned properties that were not in bad shape. They were basically just cosmetic rehabs. So you could pick up properties dirt cheap that truly were truly cosmetic. I'm talking about paint, maybe change the carpet, done. And so I did that for quite some time. And what I would do, and in a lot of this, I just taught myself. I would buy them, cheap. I would put some money into them. And once they were rehabbed and rented out, I would go to my lender and I would refinance. Now, this is before the burr became all the rage, right? It wasn't called anything. It was just something I was like, oh, the nigga give me more money than what I put into it? Like, this is great.
It was Dan the real estate man back then.
I
said it was Dan the real estate man back then. That's what it was called.
Yeah, basically, right? I thought I stumbled into this great, opportunity, which I really did. And at the time, again, this is all about the markets. You were able to buy properties like that. Then I moved on to do a multifamily properties. You were able to, 8 years ago, again, buy a vacant triplex 4-unit building that really just needed cosmetic work. Just somebody just lost it to the bank. And then I moved into the commercial multifamily space when I started buying like 6-unit vacant buildings that, again, they were already existing. Somebody just walked away from it. Right now, most of them needed more than just cosmetic rehabs. I would rewire them. I would run new plumbing, but nothing like what I'm doing right now. Nothing. And you would be able to find those deals relatively cheap. I bought a triplex. I bought actually 2 triplexes. No, I'm sorry, a quadplex I bought for $30,000. It was already existing. I bought a triplex for $25,000. It was already existing. Large units, like bi-level units. It's almost it is impossible, I'd almost say, to sort of find those deals now. And so you were able to do those, and I did a ton of those deals. And then what happened is, as real estate investing became popular again and more money was going back into the market, those deals became harder and harder to find. And the multifamily deals where people were just getting rid of them, or banks were getting rid of them, and they weren't worried about the upside equity, they stopped getting rid of them. They started selling them basically at just like market rate. Right. And now you can't even really find that. People are trying to really attach themselves to the upside equity by selling you, well, when you fix it up, it'll get this much, but they're trying to take a piece of now your upside equity. And so it's like, well, what's the point of doing all that work if I'm going to give you all of the upside equity, but I have to do all of the work? It doesn't make sense. And so as those deals became more and more difficult, I just started looking around and saying, well, where is the opportunity? And I was always interested when I would see large properties that didn't make a lot of sense as single families. So if you see like a 5-6 bedroom home, there's not a lot of interest in 5-6 bedroom homes now. Families, generally speaking, are not that big. So I started thinking, like, wow, how can you convert these into multifamilies? And then I started to learn the zoning code, and then I did a few, bumped my head quite a few times, and then I was able to create a strategy around it. So that's all I do.
Really? So that's your main thing now?
That's my only thing.
Wow. Okay, that's awesome. Yeah, because I've heard of people that have an apartment building and they'll see a room or a building that has an extra bedroom that they don't necessarily need, that they can turn that into a different space and add more value than it would cost to rehab it. But you're literally just taking a single family home that's too big and turning it into a multifamily?
Yes. And I also buy vacant commercial buildings. So I bought warehouses, I bought old churches, and I will turn them into multifamily properties.
That's crazy. Um, so as far as finding those deals, is it you're just making offers on a lot of large single family homes, or what's your process for screening that?
Yeah. So there is a specific neighborhoods that I look for. There's advantageous zoning codes that I look for. Now, what I've been able to do over the past few years is I've built up a pretty robust pipeline of deals that I've just purchased. So I already own them. So like outside of the deals I'm working on now, I have like 100 units that I haven't even built yet of land and property that I own. So I like to buy up pipelines of deals, and then that way I don't have to go out and find deals. I have it in house, and so that's how I go about doing it now.
Man, do you know of anybody else doing that? I've only heard, you're the first time I've heard of people doing that strategy.
So I don't know anybody that is as aggressively doing it as I do it. There are some other investors who understand the strategy. I will say this: it's not a cheap rehab sort of a strategy. So my average rehab is probably $350,000. So it's probably not a starting point for most newer investors.
Mm-hmm.
And there is a lot of construction. So you need to understand the process or have a GC who understands how to build a commercial property.
Right. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Now, do you use all your own money, or are you finding private lenders to do that sort of thing? Because it seems like, expanding on a really big scale. I mean, maybe you could use all your own money, but is that a strategy you use to go for other people?
Yeah, so probably 95% of what I do is private money. I still use some hard money. I try not to use any of my own money.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, so I've been dealing in private money for about 4 or 5 years. It's one of the biggest things that has helped grow my business is having private money. And I think that a lot of times investors don't truly understand what private money is, because you see a lot of hard money lenders now trying to characterize their businesses as private money. It's like, no, you're hard money. Just be hard money. But yeah, a private lender is just that, right? It's a private individual who has funds, and most of their funds generally is connected to some sort of a retirement account. And if you understand how to educate them and show them how they can self-direct those retirement accounts, you open up the world for a lot of these people, because most people don't understand that they have the power to operate like a bank does and still get the same benefits of a traditional retirement account. Yeah, so with if you are Roth or whatever, you can still get those same benefits. But a lot of people, it's just education. And if you, that's what I tell a lot of investors is you need to become educated, so that you can then educate other people and let them know, hey, like this is what you can do, this is how you can do it. And a lot of times people are just like, wow, I didn't even know that was a thing. Right. So, yeah.
How much of that learning for you was just experience versus reading books and studying and watching videos?
from the private lending point.
Just
point of
so
view?
overall, in your understanding of real estate, did you spend a lot of time researching? I know you said you kind of jumped into your first deal. Do you think the bulk of your
Mhm.
learning has just been from doing it?
Yeah. So I kind of jumped around the story a bit. So I actually did really good the first few years of buying real estate, and I had no idea what I was doing. And then I kind of jokingly said, if I read some books, I would be dangerous. And so I became really serious um, right around the time, like I said, I turned 30, and I just decided that I was not going to do the whole 40-year working at the job thing. And that's not a knock at jobs. I just realized it was no longer the path for me. So I would say if I had to put a percentage on it, I would say that 30% of it was probably me reading books, and then the other 70% was like just experience. So, and this and how that really plays out in real life is you should get educated, you should find a mentor, somebody who has done what you're trying to do, because the whole idea is not to recreate the process. The process has already been created. You're spending time trying to create a process, you're really wasting a lot of time. But at some point, you got to take massive action. At some point, that other course is not going to necessarily help you. You just need to buy a property and get busy, get your hands dirty, figure it out, bump your head a bit, whatever the case is. But that's where you're going to really learn is that hands-on, active learning, right? That classroom kind of sterile learning is good up to a point. And at some point, you got to go out there and just get busy.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's been my experience so far. As I think the first probably 3 months, I would just spend hours a day watching YouTube videos, and I still read books and do that. But at a certain point, it was just time to jump in, and that's where I've gotten the closest to getting a deal or learned the most. Just this last week, I came so close, like I could almost taste it, because I got this deal. We agreed on a price. We were talking about paperwork, and then the wife decided that they thought they could get more, and he kind of stepped back a little bit. And so then I've been working with an investor. He's kind of my mentor and walking me through everything. And I think I just totally screwed up explaining subject to, because I was going to say I could come up to their number. And I mean, I guess that's just a learning experience, but I feel like from that one thing, I learned way more than any book I've read or any video I've watched. So
Yeah, I mean, yeah, there's so much to be gained from doing a thing. And again, it's not even that they always work out. In fact, I would argue you learn more from deals that don't work out than from deals that do work out. So don't be afraid to jump in. And I think a lot of that's tied to fear of failure, fear of maybe looking silly, whatever the case is. And those are real. Those are real fears and real issues. So it's not to neglect them, but ultimately, everybody has to go through that process. Nobody starts off great at anything, right? You have to go through the processes and bump your head some. And the people who understand that will get it. Now, the people who never took any risks in their life are maybe going to want to tell you to not do that, because they're really putting their fears on to you, right? And I think ultimately, people like to see their fears. They like their fears confirmed. So if you go out and do it and you do well, now they have to really be introspective of, well, why did I not do it, right? And so that's where you see, oh, real estate's risky. Listen, everything is somewhat risky. But doing nothing is extremely risky, right? So, definitely I'd say, keep pushing the boundaries of your comfort level, because that's where all the growth is at.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. I think a lot of people are going to hear that, and it's going to make them think about what they're doing, because I feel like, yes, not everyone maybe should be their own boss and just try to start a business or whatever it might be. But I think most people, to some extent, aren't happy with where they're at. And a lot of that is because of the things you're saying and fear. And so when they see living proof of someone like you who just, jumped right in without really even having to know every single thing about what they're doing, you kind of just jumped in and got your hands dirty and ended up making a career out of it. So that's really cool. So you started, so I'm trying to think of the timeline. So you started in 2010 or right before the crash?
So I was buying as early as probably 2004.
Okay.
So I bought my primary, with what was my primary home, which actually was my childhood home. Then I bought that duplex. Then I bought a triplex after that. And I think like one or two flips. Now that was all before 2010.
Okay.
After 2010, from 2010 to about 2015, I only bought rentals because I knew I was going to be leaving my job. I wanted to create that residual income. Mm-hmm. And so then after I quit my job, I got back into doing flips. And I did flips from probably 2015 to 2017 until I just realized I didn't really like doing flips. And to be quite honest, I wasn't the best at it. It just was what it was. And I realized that I was actually making more money, in my Dan the real estate man, well now Burr strategy. I was actually buying deals so good. Like when I did cash outs, like I won't say making, but I was cashing out more funds than sometimes I was making doing flips. And then I'd have to pay taxes on those funds. So I said, well, why am I still doing flips? And so that's when I just decided, well, this doesn't make sense. I'm gonna stop doing flips and just focus on buying rentals and building that part of the business up.
Got it. Okay, that makes sense. So with having experience in kind of both of those markets, if you were starting out today, how would you go about getting into real estate?
Oh, in this market?
Yeah.
In this market, it would probably be flips. I mean, just because the buyer's market is so ridiculous now. If you can still find good deals, and you can do a decent rehab, you have a better than normal shot of making money. Mm-hmm. And then you could parlay that into some long-term holds once the market softens, which I think it will at some point, especially with the fallout from COVID, and especially in areas like Philadelphia, where there was very aggressive tenant protections, where you couldn't put people out and you weren't making any money. I think there's gonna be a lot of landlords that come out of this frustrated and very just disenfranchised by the whole process if they got burnt. Mm-hmm. And so I think there'll be some opportunities there.
Yeah, that makes sense. How soon do you think that's going to be? Because is the what's it called, the memorandum. Is that what it is?
The eviction moratorium.
Moratorium.
Yeah, it's up the June 30th. Now, in some places like Texas, they started evictions already. In other areas, it'll be after June 30th if they do not extend it, which I don't think that's going to happen again. So there's going to be some real. I mean, it's a lot of people facing eviction. So that's beyond my pay grade, but I think there's going to be a lot of frustrated landlords. A lot of the smaller landlords are just really getting beat up. Most cities, major cities anyway, did not have any protections for landlords. It's almost like, hey, now you have to be a shelter, and that's it. And so I think a lot of people are going to get out of it. It's like, I'm done. I mean, that's my opinion. I have no crystal ball.
Yeah, it makes sense. I wouldn't want to be owning a home, having to deal with tenants that won't pay rent and you can't do anything about it. I could see for sure that leaving a bad taste in someone's mouth. You mentioned you've done a little bit of work with wholesaling. What type of a deal do you wholesale? Are you looking for wholesale deals, or is it more of one you just kind of don't want, so you're going to pass it along?
Yeah, so I actually started a wholesale business. That didn't work out all that well. But as far as deals that I wholesale now, I'm mostly wholesale deals that come through my network. So I'm a big, I tell people all the time, and I cannot emphasize this enough. If you want to be in real estate, if you want to do good in almost in any business, you need a network. Because I have a fairly big network of investors that I know, I am a part of a lot of local groups. I've run a lot of local RIAs, been on a lot of panels and presentations and all this sort of things. I've met a lot of people. I know a lot of investors. And so sometimes someone may call me up with a deal, say, here, hey, Dan, here's this deal. And it's a good deal. It's just, I may not be in the market at that time. But because I know so many investors that buy different kinds of deals, it's like, hey, well, let me just make a phone call. And I'll call another person and I'll do a JV. And so real estate is one of those places where in one phone call, easily, multiple times I've made 20 grand just by making a phone call. Knowing that the other person is a solid buyer, this is a solid deal. So that's mostly how I wholesale deals now. But again, just understanding the knowledge of the process. So I understand how the process works, which to be in it. I've even helped some people, like if they're new to the business and they call me, hey, I have this deal. And again, maybe if it's not for me and I know somebody, I'll still help them structure it so that it works out. So that's how I mostly wholesale deals now. I'm not actively looking for deals to wholesale, but at least like once a month or something like that, I get a phone call from somebody that has something, and I can generally make that work.
Yeah. How often do you buy wholesale deals from someone? Is that something you do?
Yeah, I buy wholesale deals all the time if the deal makes sense. So again, I've built relationships with local wholesalers. So I tend to know who has good deals, and the unfortunate thing with wholesaling is, since it's sort of like the lowest hanging fruit, you get a lot of people who either don't know what they're doing or just outright almost like scammers. They may find something and then they try to mark it up, even though it's not their deal. And so if somebody that I haven't heard of, Not that I know everyone, but again, I know a lot of people locally. I will try to gauge what their connection to the property is. And that's before I get too deep into it. Like if I don't know you personally, and it's like, it's a deal from a deal from a deal from a deal, it's like 4 people down. It's like, nah, like I don't even want to get that. Put me in contact with the person who has the deal. You'll still get your money if if it makes sense. But I'm not dealing with you, and you got to talk to 3 more other people. It's just a waste of everybody's time.
Yeah, for sure. Because the first guy finds the best deal, and then 2 more people want to get a piece of that before an actual buyer gets on it.
Yeah, I've seen deals. I've seen deals pop up, and they're like, I don't know where that feedback's coming from, but I've seen deals pop up, and there's like a $40,000 difference. And it's like, do you guys not know we all see these deals? Like, like you're not working in some wholesaler vacuum, right? I saw the other email go out earlier. All you did was add 30,000 to it. I mean, come on.
Yeah, that's funny. What's a story of a setback you've had that taught you something, or a mistake you made in your career?
Yeah, that's an easy one. So I had a deal I did that I lost about $105,000.
Wow.
And yeah, and what it taught me a couple of things. So just to sort of set the scene for that particular setback was, I was about 2 years, 2 to 3 years out of SEPTA. I was really starting to pick up some steam, was finding deals regularly. I had a really good hard money lender. I connected with one of my first private lenders, turned out to be just like a monster private lender. So I had access to capital. And so I'm doing all these deals, about 5 or 6, 7 deals at the same time. These were sizable deals. And but I was still GC and everything. I was, I had tenants at the time, probably about 30 units at that time, and I was still property managing, and I was not paying attention to the details, and just, one bad contractor after the next, and just bad decisions because, I'm running all around. And so what I learned from that was 2 big things. Number one was, what gets you to one level is not what's going to get you to the next level. So what got me out of my job was the fact that I was able to sort of be a solopreneur. I was able to do a lot of this by myself, right? I was able to GC deals. I was still able to manage projects, and I was able to do that. The other thing is that if you want to scale, you need to have structure. You need that infrastructure under you to build that scale out. And I see a lot of investors making this mistake, even though they don't know it yet. And I try to caution them against it, because your ambition can outpace your ability a lot of times, and nobody wants to hear that. It's just the truth, right? And so what will generally happen is, just like me, somebody will get excited, they do 2, 3 good deals, and now they think they can do 20 deals. And it's like, well, what does that look like? How are you going to manage all these projects? How are you going to keep track of all those funds and make all those payments? And then how are you going to still, if you are a buy and hold investor, how are you going to property manage it? Because you can only be so many places at one time. And so what that forced me to do was go back to the drawing board and create systems and processes. Because up until that point, I didn't really have a real business. I was just winging it. Every time I did something, I was kind of winging it. And I was like, well, I can't keep winging it. It's just, this is never going to work. And so I just shut down shop for like 6 months and just worked on processes. Okay, what do I do first? What do I do second? And then I brought on people to help me out. And I've built that out since then. So those are the two things is what gets you to that one level is generally not the skill sets. It's going to take you to the next level. And if you're going to scale, then you need to have that infrastructure under you. So what I do now is my business structure is actually in front of where the business necessarily is. I'm not trying to make it too far. You don't want to see too much money, but I keep enough staff so that I can grow into what I'm doing versus growing into it and then trying to, build the business around the roof. It's very difficult to play catch up.
Yeah, that's awesome. I think that's super important because, if you think about the biggest businesses, they're not run by one person. They've built up, maybe it was started, and now it's, the top of it is focused on other things. Where do you spend most of your time now then? Are you more just working on finding the deals? Are you more working on managing them? How does that go?
Yeah, so I consider myself, I am the CEO of the company. That's how I look at it. So I'm looking forward. Like I'm looking like, okay, well, what's next, right? How do we grow the business? And not almost all of the day-to-day activities, I really don't have to do much. Once, I still do find the deals, though, like I said, I have a pretty robust pipeline. It's still my capital connections, and I cultivate those and I keep those. But on a day-to-day, it's my project manager, it's my construction manager, it's my office manager, and my property manager. They run the day-to-day operations, right? If like I said, I just came back from San Juan, and maybe one phone call, right? And that's with over $1 million of rehabs going on, and a bunch of units and all that sort of stuff. And that's the way I like it, because I didn't get into this to be more busy, right? I could have just kept my gig for all that, right? I could have just stayed working if I wanted to be tied to like a job. And that's what most people do. They just create themselves a fancy job, where they're intertwined with every single thing they have to be in on. And I don't want that for myself. That's not what I wanted. And so I'm willing to sacrifice a little bit of, I tell investors, they may make more than me per deal, but they also have to work a lot harder. And I'm okay with that. I'm a lifestyle guy. I want to keep my lifestyle. I want to be able to, if tomorrow I want to pick back up and go back to Puerto Rico, nothing stops. It all keeps going. And a lot of investors can't do that because they don't have systems or processes in place. Some of them are too cheap. And I look at this as this is a long-term business. I plan on being in business for many years to come. So I'm okay. If you make more money than me on individual deals, that's fine. I'm not worried about that. I'm worried about having something that will be here for the next 40, 50 years, hopefully even further along. And it's a real business there that I can set up for my children or whomever wants to be involved, and not handing them off chaos.
Yeah, no,
so that's the other thing.
I think that's so spot on. And kind of going back to your point earlier, I think so many people work jobs and they may even enjoy their job, but I don't think anybody would not want to have something to fall back on in case they couldn't work. Like, people are killing themselves over a job that they could be replaced for in a week if they died, and if you had the ability to not work if you want to, no one's going to say no to that, which is exactly what kind of the business you're building is. And I think people are just afraid to try because that the possibility of failure is there, and that is worse than, in their mind, than the possibility of their current reality. And I mean, that just doesn't add up to me. And so, I mean, I have a job, I fly airplanes, it's fun, but to me, this is something like, first of all, I enjoy doing it, or so far what I've done. Can't say that I've done anything yet, but it's also, like you're saying, it's like, I feel like everyone should have that 50-year plan in some form.
Yeah, and so a big part of what you're talking about really, and this is something I talk about a lot of what gets you out of, you know, or gets you beyond that fear is mindset. And so what I recommend, especially if you are a 9-to-5, or if you don't come from like a wealthy type family where maybe they discuss mindset, you need to work on your mindset, because a lot of what you have been taught is taught to you so that you stay conditioned to work until you die. And they use the fear to create those boundaries for you, right? A lot of people fear losing status, fear looking silly, or, you know, fear losing money even. And kind of back to that example where I lost like 105 grand on that one deal. It wasn't the end of the world. I mean, I know it sounds horrible, right? It was more than I was making when I was working, but I'm still here. I didn't turn into a puddle or anything. I actually, that year I still made 6 figures. So it wasn't the end of the world, right? It's just, it happens. It happens. And so once you sort of wrap your mind around that, and honestly, when the first time I was super embarrassed about it, I wouldn't talk about it, but now it's like, like it doesn't, it's actually a story there, and it's not the end of the world.
Mm-hmm. That's awesome. One of the questions I always like to ask, because the name of the podcast is the Get Wealth Podcast. I think you've kind of alluded to it a little bit, but what is your definition of wealth?
Yeah, so I just posted something that I saw on Instagram. I thought was Instagram or Facebook. I thought was interesting. It was the ability to like live life by your own means or something like that, or basically to have the freedom to do what you want. Once you have that, and just to be clear, most people never experience that, right? Even people who make a lot of money at a job, you still don't have the freedom to do what you want. You truly have to answer to somebody for something. But when you are in charge of your personal economy, and you can go where you want, when you want, that's a freedom I think everybody should experience at least once in their lives. It's absolutely amazing. And once you experience it, it's like, well, I'm never going back. I can't, I always tell people my worst day investing, and I've had some doozies, and that's putting it very PG. I never thought, man, I wish I was back on the tools, right? And that's not a jab at a job or somebody on the tools. It just is. Once you get that freedom, it's there is no going back. And so I love that, and I'm so happy that I bet on myself.
Yeah, I think that's a great definition, and I think a lot of people would agree with it. Well, man, Dan, I really appreciate you coming on the podcast. I really enjoyed the conversation. I don't know how someone could listen to this and not get excited and motivated about whatever they got going on, because you're a real life example of someone who just put in the hard work and is making it happen and is going to continue to do well. So yeah, thanks for coming on the show, man. And then I guess if you have any social media, websites, things you want to put out for people can find you.
Sure. So the website is www.dantherealestateman.biz. It's www.dantherealestateman.biz. dan.therealestateman.biz. On Facebook, it's Dan the Real Estate Man. That's Dan the Real Estate Man. On Instagram, it's Dan the Real Estate Man 1. That's Dan the Real Estate Man 1, because I lost the password to Dan the Real Estate Man. But I post Mindset Mondays, I post Tip Tuesdays, Walkthrough Wednesdays. I'm always posting a lot of just information because I understand that starting off can be very difficult. Real estate is a big industry, and so I try to give some guidance to help people, get through those stages.
Awesome. Everyone go follow Dan and check out his website. So thanks for coming on the show, man.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
All right, get well, everybody.